Hello and welcome to another interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 1,000 comedians for the last 50 years. My guest today is the other comedy nerd. It's Mr. Mark Duqueno. Yay! Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hello, mate. I'm great. How you been?
I've done really well. I'm doing really good. I'm so pleased we can finally chat on the podcast because I keep bumping into you at comedy nights, and it's wonderful to chat comedy with you. So I'm looking forward to the next hour or so.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, the other comedy nerd. You've got a cheek. That's how I refer to you.
Well, we love comedy so much. What's not to
Yeah,
love? It's so good.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the first thing I want to ask you, you have
Mm.
a wonderful podcast called Comedy in a Nutshell, which I listen
hmm
to every week without fail, with you interviewing wonderful comics.
Mm.
What do you want to achieve out of the podcast? Do you have an aim for it? Why do you do it?
Why do I do it? I just want someone to talk to. No, it occurred to me because I love comedy and you love comedy so much. I wondered if the people who do comedy feel the same way about it as I do, as we do. So what I've talked to people in the industry, but mostly comedians, and it's really to see whether they look at comedy the same way that we do. Because once it's a job, the perspective changes. So
That's exactly
basically,
it.
I want to know if they watch comedy still and if they see it in the same way, or if they can turn off the comedian in them and just enjoy it as an audience member, that sort of thing. And then what I say is I want them to take all of their experiences, all of their learning, their career, all the subtle nuances of a lifetime of comedy, and then sum the whole lot up in like 2, 3 sentences.
That's brilliant. I am 1,000,000% behind you because the reason I think why my blog and podcast work is my enthusiasm. It's not a job, it's a
Yes.
passion for loving it and supporting them all. And
Yeah.
I always remember when I first had the idea for the blog, I had no idea. I didn't have a clue what a blog was. And my friend in Carlisle, she runs a business, and she
Mm.
said, this thing is crying out for a blog. And I booked myself on a 1 day writing course where
Yes.
uh, everybody around me wanted to be reviewers, and I said to the woman, I said, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a diarist, I'm not a reporter, I'm
Yeah.
a member of the audience out to have fun and support them all. And they never bothered me again because I think as soon as it becomes or feels like work, don't
Yes.
do it because you do that. Most of us do it most
Yeah.
of the time, and I find it fascinating that every time we go to these things, this one person or a group of people are out desperately trying to make us laugh. That's the point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what is not to love about that? It's so good supporting them.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a
You
great gift, the
agree?
gift of laughter.
It is. It is. It's brilliant. You
Yeah.
are probably the only person I know who watches more comedy than I do, which is extraordinary. And indeed, I'm getting this correct. You've taken 2023 off work to attend as much comedy as you can. Is
Yes.
there a reason for this? Because I couldn't do it every night.
Call yourself a fan. How silly. Um, I mean, as far as going to a load of comedy is concerned, I go to comedy. I mean, I could say it averages out every night, but if I go to a festival, I might see many, many shows in one day. If I'm a regular day, it might be every other day I'll go and see a show. But why to take time off? I suppose it's because it's now. I've had a lot go on over the last few years, as indeed
Right.
everybody has.
Yeah.
Um, but everything kind of sort of just converged to the point where, like in the movies when the character is sitting at their desk and they just, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I kind of had one of those moments, and I thought, you spend all of this time watching people on the TV dicking around, and you take your job very seriously, and then they're sticking around, and you look at your job, and you look at them, and you look at your job, and you look at them, and you go, I want to hang out with those guys. They're having way more fun than I am. So that's the one thing that's been a constant is the laughter, the gigs, and seeing all the live comedy, and laughter's always been the constant. Charlie Chaplin said, "A day without laughter is a day wasted," and what's
very true.
What better way to put it? So, and I already went to all the festivals, so I just thought, why can't I just do that? At least for a year. I might, if I can do it longer, I will, but the money will run out. So But
a friend of mine once said to me, he was an accountant, and he once said, I got up one day and I walked to work, and I thought to myself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And he said, by the time I've got to work, if I found out a reason why I want to do this job, I'll stay. If not, I'll resign. And he got to work, resigned, and became a cartoonist, which is what he always wanted to do. And he's having an absolute blast. And I can totally see your point. It is. It's like, it's so joyous to be part of it. I mean, the last time I saw you big time was at the Leicester Comedy Festival, and I'd never spent as long there, and I had the greatest time. It was it's just the feeling of being part of something magical, whether it's a comedy show or an event or a festival or a fringe, and it's just wonderful. I can't really describe it more than that.
Yeah, being a small part of it is, I think, one of the things. As you know, I volunteer at Leicester, so it's a 19-day festival, and I'm there throughout. Have done for a few years now, and it's extraordinary, and the festival itself is extraordinary. It's a beautiful town, loads of lovely people. All the venues are nice and close together, so you can walk very quickly from one show to the next.
Yes, it's
fantastic. And I see so many shows there, and as a volunteer, I get to participate in a small way, and it's lovely to feel just a tiny little cog in the great giant machine that is the comedy that's going on there. And I liken it also, I think about when you go to an open mic night or a new material night or something like that, because as the comics will often say, you're a very special part of today, because some of these jokes might one day be on live at the Apollo, and some of them will never be heard again. And you're participating in making that decision by laughing or not laughing.
Yeah. And as you say, it's of the moment. You go in, you sit in a room, and because it's live, you never know what's going to happen, and that's the magic. It's like right, entertain me. And what you were saying about being part of a cog. This last particular week, we're recording this in April, the end of April 2023. We just, I saw you last Tuesday for the celebratory show for Downstairs at the King's Head, 40 years. And I went there again yesterday, and I met Georgina Sowerby, who works on the, she normally works on the door, but she was in the big famous room where all the magic happens, where they put the thing, because Peter Graham wasn't there. And she sent me a message this morning, and she said, it's wonderful being part of a cog in a small machine. Exactly what you just said. and it doesn't matter what part you play. All the comedians get the recognition for being on the stage, but there are so many people behind the scenes who are obviously as passionate about the medium as we are, and that do get forgotten about. So big thumbs up to them, and thank you very much, everybody, for what you do. It's an extraordinary medium, and long may it continue.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, my friend, I don't know whether you're like me with a list of every comedian you've ever seen, which is, I think, for me, rather sad. Can you remember? Can you remember your first ever gig? When and where was it?
Well, no.
I can tell you mine.
Well, okay.
I'm
Let me
old.
put it another way. So yes, I have a list. I have my spreadsheet, as we nerds do. Um, and yes, unfortunately, it relies almost entirely on my memory, which is Swiss cheese. So
You're putting
I do
yourself
have
down.
I do have okay, so I do have a terrible memory, but which is good and bad. But the good side is it means I can watch a show and then a week later I can watch it again, and I can enjoy it just as much
Yeah,
because I don't remember the jokes, but I do remember how it made me feel, and where there might be lulls or highs or what have you.
yeah, very much so.
I still laugh at the jokes. They might be I'll sort of laugh and then I go, well, that's familiar because I just heard it a week ago, but I still laugh in the right places. It's kind of I get like constant deja vu. Did I already mention that? I can't remember. Um,
No.
on the other hand, on the other hand, it does mean I struggle occasionally to remember details of shows, even if I've just seen them. So I get like memories just appear at random, and I go, "Oh, is that gig on the list? I can't remember." So I'll check, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, and I add another gig in. That said, so I think the first gig that I saw, was in 1979,
Wow.
and that was Little and Large.
Oh, my friend,
That
classic.
was that was
Where was that at?
I think it was Torquay.
Princess Theatre.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't remember it enormously because I was 7. But and of course Eddie McGuinness, he passed away quite
Yeah,
recently, which
tragic.
is
Yeah,
just tragic. But that back then, in the late 70s, I'd seen them on the television, and I can't emphasize enough what the TV was back in those days, because it's quite funny, because I was talking to someone like only yesterday, and they were saying to their son, "Oh, this isn't on at the moment, so but I want to watch it now." And this mindset of I want to watch it now and I want to watch all of it. Whereas back then, there's no internet. There's 3 channels, and you watch the TV. Exactly. You watch the TV, and you see the show that you want to see, the
yeah.
comedians or whatever it was, and then you got to wait a week for the next episode. You know, you got to
I
wait.
still do that. I don't bother
Yeah.
with box sets.
Well, there you go. But it's like if you're watching a TV show and there's a cliffhanger, you got to wait a week, and then a week comes around, and then they say, "Oh, this program's been put back a week because Argentina invaded the Falklands or something like that," and there's a special news bulletin, and you go, "But what happened on Chips? I want to know what happened next." So watching comedians on the television was all encompassing. It's like it was an event. It was the Morecambe and Wise Christmas special. The whole family gathered around, and back then, 30%, 50% of the whole country would watch one show. Amazing. And you go to school the next day, and everyone would be talking about what happened on the Morecambe and Wise Christmas special, because no one had watched anything else.
No.
Now it will be say, "Have you watched this top-rated Netflix series?" And you go, "I've never heard of it. I don't know what you're talking about," because there are 50,000 other things to watch.
Christmases were ruined if the Morecambe and Wise show wasn't up to par, and that's pressure.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. People would fight to be guests on it.
Yeah,
it was huge.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to suddenly to go from watching these amazing shows on television, and then to be a child in a huge theatre, seeing the idiots on the TV fanning around live in front of you on the stage, and then be surrounded by people unified in laughter.
Yeah.
I'm quite an insular person generally, as you know. So to suddenly be connected to all of these people in unison by laughter was enormous.
It's incredible. My first ever gig was Les Dawson in Scarborough, who was just phenomenal. And then a year later, again, a family holiday, we saw Tommy Cooper. Amazing. But the Torquay infamous episode for me was when we went to see Tom O'Connor, who was on a par with Little and Large. You know, that sort
Yes.
of those sort of nightclub comics who played all the clubs and built the way up, and then they got the break on TV. So
Mm.
Tom O'Connor walks on, starts doing the jokes, and I'm 10-year old, and suddenly I start laughing at him and loudly. I mean, really loudly laughing at him.
Of course. Yeah.
And
I've met you.
I
So
didn't realize. I thought, what the hell's that? And then he double backed and walked off the stage and came back on and adjusted his tie and carried on. And I thought, my God, I've just made him leave the stage. My laugh must be, it must be my laugh. And at the end, he gave me a little thumbs up and walked off. And I thought, well, God bless him. So, you know, thank you, Tom, for the laugh. But that's the magical thing. And I think as well,
yeah.
certainly with my blog, I have every single act listed in every single venue I've seen.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I do the blog is to watch the comics grow. You know,
Yes.
a classic example is Harry Hill, who I first saw 30 years ago, made it big on TV, and is now playing the clubs again, which is amazing because clearly he can't get enough of the comedy, and that's the magic of doing it. And to watch them grow and develop is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
What do you look for when deciding on watching a comedian on stage?
I don't look for anything specific, you know, I don't have rules per se. But what I do is I diarize as many shows as I possibly can.
Right.
So from all the different sources, you know, from venues, from people tweeting about the show they're going to be doing and so on. I put them all in my calendar, and then very near the day or even on the day, I go, well, I'm going to go there. This is what I'm in the mood for. That's the show I'm going to do today. I've met some very generous people. I'd like to think I've made some friends. I don't know if that's what they would say. They're listening to this now saying, who's he talking about? What's he on about? Yeah. But I do get a fair few comps. I get discounts.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I suppose I look for people I would rarely be able to see, or big names playing small rooms, like you said. If they would normally do like a theatre, now they're doing a work in progress in a club setting or something like that. I said I go to new material nights. I like to support new comedians. So I do go to people I've not seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, there's thousands of comedians out there, but now there's people now who have, because they have different gender or non-binary, different religions, ethnic backgrounds, sexuality, their voices are now being heard, which means they've got different perspectives and different source material. So I get to see these people as well. There's still a place for cis white men to make knob gags, you know. But there is room for all kinds of comedy, and there's audiences for it. So I'll happily go to a themed. It might be an all-female night or all Asian night or LGBT.
Yeah.
Plus,
yeah.
I'll happily go to all of them. It's just make me laugh, but I don't plan on what I'm going to see. I'll write everything down, and then on the day or the day before, I go, I'm going to go and do that, and I'll get to see new acts that way, or I get to see something exciting. And it's finding a moment. It's finding a moment in time. Moments in comedy are more important than any joke.
Yeah, I totally agree. So diarising everything in a particular week, that's what takes the time, presumably.
Yeah. Well,
Because
you know, I spend a lot of time on the bus.
And say again?
I spend a lot of time on the bus going to gigs. So just doom scrolling through, you know, other people go doom scrolling through Instagram stories, and I'm scrolling through venue what's on pages.
And do you do all this through the internet, or do you have other sources or anything like that?
It's mostly through the internet. That's where all the information is, and all the different diverse sources to find out. So I do hear now and then I'll get sent a message or something saying, "Oh, I'm going to be doing this line up, or I'm doing my show, come to my show, or I'm starting a new night, and you'll go down and try and support new clubs when they're opening if I can. I say support, it's just another pair of hands clapping in the back of the room.
No, it's great. It's another reason why I do my blog. It's not just for the big names, it's supporting all the new up and coming comics, and the story that comes to mind is the history teacher who I used to work for, who's been on this blog, who is still a history teacher but in a different school. But he became a stand-up comedian, and you need a friend when you first start out. And I went along to see him, it must have been 25 times to hear the same 5 minutes. And even I got bored with that. But he was so appreciative. Rich, you're laughing in all the right places. It's so good.
Well, I'd be all right because I wouldn't remember.
Exactly.
I've never seen this guy before in my life.
I couldn't have taken my other mate, because he's always one. If he's heard a routine before from a comedian, he'll lean over halfway through and go, "I've heard this," and it's like, well, yes, but you appreciate the delivery and. I asked this next question to a lot of comedians who have been on this blog, and sometimes they're stumped for an answer. What do you think, having seen so many comedians, makes a good comic?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think the first thing is that a good comedian knows who they are. They talk, when you talk about comedians, or you talk to comedians, they talk about things like being honest. They talk about being an exaggerated version of themselves, or being themselves on stage, and I think that's true. You talk about what you know, what you see, what you're familiar with. That's why I don't make jokes about sex. It's always good to be inspired by other people, other comedians, but you can't be them. You got to know who you are and tell your story.
Yeah.
Even if you're just telling puns or anything, that's your personality, is to tell those jokes. So it's just, that's who you are. Be that. Choose who you are and be that. And then I think that's one thing. I think also a good comedian will watch themselves perform. A lot of times you'll see people with their phones and they'll be recording what they're saying, but I think they need to watch themselves as well. I think someone else has mentioned this. It might have been Stella Graham I spoke to. It's important to watch yourselves, because you don't know what you're doing with your hands, or you might be leaning, caressing the microphone stand a little much, and it's distracting to an audience. If you've got all this going on, if I sat here doing this the whole time, that would be, you wouldn't listen to a word I was saying, because you'd go, "What are you doing with his hands?"
Presumably it get taken away.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Get away. But that's I think that's important, that people watch and they could see how they act on stage. So that's another thing I think that makes a good comedian, is to understand, not just understand themselves, but understand how they are perceived, by visually as well as vocally. Another one I think is to understand the mechanics of it. You talk about things like the rule of three, or callbacks, or slow reveal, that sort of thing. All of these ideas that we know make comedy work. If you understand them, and then the really good comics will be able to take those and play with them.
Yeah.
To subvert the rules. I've talked to a couple of people about there's that Edinburgh trope, the hour show. You have to have a sort of a pathos moment. It's typically about 40 minutes in, there'll be the sad bit. Oh, something bad, something sad happened. I think Russell Kane started that trend. But you got to talk about the sad bit. Something sad happened, somebody died, or there was a struggle or a challenge, and then after that you go, "Oh, but it was all right. There's redemption at the end." And you go, "Hey." And then we all played football, and it was great, and we won. And you go, "Oh, right, yes, well done. That was a nice little moment."
It's like writing a letter. If you want something in a letter, you start off with something good, and then you want what you want, and then you come back with something good at the end. So what you want might be, "Can I have this?" Because and then you come back up. So it's positive, negative, positive. It's the same with comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, colloquially known as the shit sandwich. So, what I've then seen, I've seen a couple of comedians sort of play with it. I saw one time, I really can't remember their names, and I wish I could give them credit, but I saw one comic would through the first 40 minutes, every now and then they go, oh, 10 minutes to the sad bit now, and then they're like, oh, now 5 minutes to go to the sad bit, and they're playing with it really on the back of it, you know. And another one just started a timer at the side of the stage, counting down 40 minutes. It was there the whole time, and you're nudging in the audience, hey, it's coming, and you're like, it's so weird that they take that thing. Oh, you got to do this to make it a complete show. It has to have pathos and denouement and all this.
Yeah.
And then now people are taking that, and because you know it's going to happen, they go, well, now let's really blow that up and make a joke out of it, you know.
Because if you were starting out, it's like 5s and then 10s and then 20s and then an hour.
Yes.
And to progress from that, you must learn these mechanisms like you've been describing. Yeah. And I particularly like your mobile phone analogy about visual humour as well as listening to yourself, because the story that comes up, that I've told you many times, was when we saw Lily Phillips at 2 North Down, and she walked on and put a mobile phone down in front of us because we were sitting on the front row. She grinned at me and said, "I'm going to have a good time tonight." And I think she was referring to your laugh, or it's probably my laugh. But she was, and I mean, what a comedian she is.
I mean, Lily is incredible. She is completely disarming. I love the fact that her humor is so, well, filthy, frankly, because she
comes across so innocent.
She's got this right sweetness and innocence. It's like, I'm kind of so sweet, aren't I? And she talks about like throwing menstrual blood across the kitchen and growing her ass hair, and you're like going, what? Who's saying? Where's this coming from? I think it's incredible. I mean, she's very, very funny, very, very good comedian. Absolutely,
so well.
I think she's fantastic.
Yeah. So, you know. Do you have a favourite style of comedian? So people who tell one-liners, or storytellers, or nutcases, or
nutcases.
Thinking Jason Byrne as an example off the top of my head.
Well, simply put, no, I don't. If you remember, I go to a lot of shows. Like if I'm at Edinburgh or Leicester, last Leicester in 19 days, I saw 78 shows.
I mean, it's bonkers. Wonderful, but bonkers.
So I might see 6, 8, 10 shows in a day, you know, and I'm going to go, I'm not going to rock up there and say, yeah, I like one-liner comedians, because after the 10th show, my eyes will be bleeding, you know, it'll be incredible. I saw 3 clowning acts, one after the other, and they were all excellent in their own right. But that's a long time not to hear any words.
Yeah,
you know? And they were all great, but after a while I was going, I need something else, anything. You know? So if I can go from a one-liner comic to I can go to a music act, a storyteller, a clown, a double act, a punster, and so on and on and on. That keeps my day interesting. I'm still seeing comedy all day, but it's all different. You know, I would happily watch Les Dawson and Victoria Wood, Tommy Cooper. They're very different. So what's the difference there? Why wouldn't I watch those?
Yeah.
Make me laugh. That's all I want.
Good answer. It's all about laughing. If that's the number one thing. They've got to make you laugh. And what's not to love about that? Have you ever had a go at stand-up comedy? And if not, why not?
Of course I have. Of course. Oh well. Okay. It was what it was. Let's leave it there.
Tell me the story.
Oh no. I tried stand up a couple of times. I recited some other people's jokes because there was no one else was getting up to do something. Another time I had a go with a few of my own jokes. It was you try things out. I mean, it wasn't for me. Never say never. Maybe one day. A lot of comedians I'm quite insular, introverted, bit shy. I know I might not be coming across that, but
I'm loving this. This is great. Yes,
I'm told a lot of comedians are, but maybe some people don't start till they're in their 70s. So I've got plenty of time.
I am exactly the same. I've told this story many a time, but I had to go once, and it was a gong show. It couldn't be
Yeah.
worse. And I did this wonderful script. It was at the time when I just passed my driving test in Carlisle, and I'm not a very good driver, infamously. I can get from A to B, but as Jasper Carrott used to say, I've seen so many accidents, and they have never been my fault. So I did this script, walked out, there's three people in the crowd,
Mm.
and the first line was, people think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, but I can't see the resemblance myself. And of course, I'm his double. And one old fella in the back just went, "Fuck off and cut me off." And I thought, oh, that's it. And then the promoter said, "Have another go." But I said, no, no. I said exactly the same as you. I said, never say never again. But I think I found my calling in the audience. And so it is, we've managed
Yeah.
to support and enjoy a medium without having to do it. So yeah, I just think it's wonderful.
I was in a band many years ago. I was in a band.
Tell me about that.
There were, I mean, we did semi-funny songs, sort of semi-seriously, with there's a lot of prop work involved. It was more like a musical sketch group, really.
Right.
I've posted some old photos on my Instagram feed, and probably shouldn't have done. The local papers referred to us as the Tommy Coopers of pop. And
wow.
I think
that's going.
Another one was the Barron Knights of the 90s. That was what was. I don't know if anyone remembers the Barron Knights. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing, but because I was playing, because it was a band, there was a lot of props, so I had props to hide behind. I had instruments to hide behind. We'd all swap instruments on different, we'd take the guitar and then we'd put the bass guitar, or someone played drums, or a drum. We didn't have a drum kit, a drum. And swap around, and then there would be like a TARDIS on stage, and we play a Doctor Who song, and then we'd get in the TARDIS, and then they'd sort of try and change clothes in the TARDIS, but then the TARDIS would fall over, and they'd be lying on the floor in their pads.
Wow!
It was a lot of that sort of thing. So it was basically everything that went wrong was funny, and everything went wrong. So it was kind of like the play that goes wrong, but in music.
In music,
and there are YouTube videos of it knocking around more than I would like, to be honest. I don't regret doing it, but I should. The last gig we did, we played the Tromenali Film Festival, which is like an alternative to the Berlinale, the International Film Festival. The Tromenali is like the Troma films,
right?
Like Toxic Avenger, that sort of thing. So Tromenali is an alternative film festival. That was in Berlin in 2006, and we played there. And it was, on the one hand, it was a lot of fun, and on the other hand, the less said, the better. That was my last live show, but the band is still going. I think they started in 1988, and they are still going. So I was with them in the 90s. So.
You still go and see them?
No.
Would you say that because you were in this type of band, it's influenced what you do now? Or it's helped to influence what you do now, or is this a completely different
thing? It was just being a part of something, and being a part of being fun and funny.
Yeah.
And it's just another way of being part of that comedy scene, being that small cog again. Oh, I'm playing around. I'm doing what the people on the TV doing. I'm dicking about.
Good.
I just like doing the dicking about. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
That's great. What is your view of comedy competitions? Do you think they develop a comedian's career?
I've spoken to comedians about this on my podcast, and I think opinion varies wildly, but I don't think it does really. If you're in a competition and you win, it's everything. But if you don't win, it's either meaningless, or if you've got like an overdeveloped sense of justice, it's a big slap in the face. And I think think the only the way of doing doing the competition, the only way it really helps your career is the status accorded to it by the industry. So if no one cares if you win a gong show, only you care if you win a gong show. But if you win Leicester Mercury Comedian of the Year, then you might get some attention. And it's a nice thing to put on your Edinburgh poster, you know.
Yeah.
If you win at Leicester, you're set up for Edinburgh. If you win at Edinburgh, you're on the radar for Live at the Apollo. Then you get more exposure, that sort of thing. And then one day you might get on QI. Imagine that, you know. So, but it depends. It depends on the value that other people put on the competition. And I don't think there are many that have the status that you might think they do entering necessarily. I think the best thing to think about competitions is that it's another gig.
Very much so. Yeah. The ones that I've been to, many of the comedians that took part have carried on. It's not like I'm going to enter this competition, and if I don't win, then that's it. They just keep carrying on, and as I said at the top of the podcast, the magic for me is to watch them develop. That's a massive reason why I do this, and to see them again and again and again and again and watch them grow is just wonderful. The competition is only a little tiny part of it if they're lucky enough.
I think
if
you win it, it's exactly, there's loads of competition. If you win competitions, if you win loads of competitions, they're affirmations. You know, they're a nod saying there's a few people in a particular room at a particular time who think that you're better than the other people in that room in that moment in time. So you go, well done you for that bit. You know, but if you were up against 5, 6 other people, it might have gone differently. And just because you won this competition, you go a couple of miles down to the next town down the road, and it could be different audience, different vote. So if they see it as it's a gig, and if I win it, it's a slap on the back. But then tomorrow's another gig. It's Millikan's Law, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can revel in it or revel in the reward or dwell on the horror.
Wasn't it something like
11 o'clock
the next day? You know.
Yeah, that's it. And then it's over and on.
Still thinking about it, give up.
Yeah, exactly.
About the last one. Bearing in mind your memory and your diary notes. To date, what has been your best and worst attended comedy gig? You must have some stories about things going on, or things that you thought, I've found somebody great here, and they've gone on and they've done it.
When you say best and worst attended, do you mean that I've attended, or the fewest people turned up?
If you've been to a comedy gig, because I asked this about comedians and their best and worst gigs in their careers, and because you attend so many like me, have you been in a comedy night where things have gone awfully wrong, or have you been in a comedy night? So for example, I saw Peter Kay. Before he was famous, in a tiny Manchester club. He was 4th on the bill of 5 acts, and I missed the 5th act through laughing, and I had to go and apologise 6 months later to the 5th act, who happened to be Dave Gorman. I didn't know, but when I said, "Oh, it's Dave Gorman," oh my god! So that's an example.
Yeah, it really is hard to pick out a best, because everyone seems to usurp the one before. I mean, it might be I saw a single comedian do a solo show, and I was like, oh, that's just the best show I've ever seen. And then the next night I'll see a mixed bill with a compilation of people who were so great, and I go, well, now that's the best one I've ever seen. But it's a different show completely. Or like I might see that I mentioned, like the clowns, I might have seen Julia Masley or someone do a show, and I go, that's the best show I've ever seen, but that's a clowning show. And then I go and see the wonderful Adele Cliff, do a show, entirely different show, and I go, no, that was brilliant. I love that. And
Yeah.
then I'll go home and I'll put on, you know, a Tommy Cooper special, and I go, now that's the best thing I've ever. So it's impossible because they're so
It's
different.
all
You know,
dependent on mood or
exactly.
what. As you said before, the main reason why you do it is to find the funny from it. It's
Yeah,
not. It's not. You're analysing different things as you're going along. That
yeah,
it's all dependent on your mood. Um,
yeah. But in terms of worst gigs, I mean, the worst attended in terms of the fewest people who, the worst gig I've been at, I was in. So that's above the, you know, any gig that I've been in was been the worst gig. But the worst, I mean, what's funny for me is I've been to so many shows where I've been the only one in the audience.
wow.
Um,
Oh, I've
loads.
never ever done that.
I've done it
No,
many, many
that's
times.
extraordinary. So they're just playing
Um,
for you.
yeah, sometimes if I turn up to a show and I'm the only one there, then I won't be offended if they want to cancel it. Why, you know, why would they do it? I saw at Edinburgh last year. I saw at the Wee Room at the Three Sisters, which holds about 10 people.
Yeah.
There was two performers performing together, and I was the only one in the room. So I mean, that is intense because you're in a cupboard with two of them,
That's
just 2 to 1,
degrading.
and they're like, I say, you know, don't worry, I'll come back another night. It's Edinburgh, you're playing every night. I'll come back another night. But they said, no, we'll do the gig. We'll do it anyway. And they basically did it at me. They did a show at me, which for someone who normally stands at the back is quite intense.
I can
But
imagine.
it was a lot of fun. They were very young and vigorous. I'd say it's there was the Daft Duo, so it's new, very young, vigorous comics. Angela Legg and Sarah Paloma, who's going to be on my podcast. I've recorded it. She's a wonderful person to talk to. So this Daft Duo, and there was song and dance and stand up and like theatrics. It was a lot going on. It was very busy, and it was a great show. And at the end, it was a free fringe, so you know I offered them some money, and they said no, let's just take a selfie. So we took a picture together, and that was it. But that was their payment for the night. Was a photo with me. What that means to anybody, I have no idea. But they were really nice. They got, yeah, well someone turned up. Yeah, I'm sure. But the thing is, the show got a lot of excellent feedback. It got like a 4-star review, I think. Tim Vine was complimentary about it. So you know, but the show that I saw, that turnout was anomalous, obviously, because they obviously got a lot of feedback. One gig I was at there was quite local to me. I think it was Kingston or Surbiton or something. There were 7 comedians on the bill, and I was the only audience member. 7 individual stand-ups, all names I knew, so they weren't new comics. This wasn't a new up and coming. These were established acts.
Yeah.
One of them had come from the US to do a few London nights, and this was one of them. And again, I knew who they were, so they were well known enough that from across the pond, I recognized this comic, and a bunch of others. And they said, "Oh, let's just do it to each other." And then again, I didn't have a choice but to sit at the front of the room. It was a very big room, and I didn't have a choice but to sit at the front while these 7 comedians rotated around. And again, everyone, oh, that's a comedian, you. So I'll do at you. And they're like, yep. But it was a great night. It was a great night because it was fun. Again, the pressure's off, really.
Yeah,
in a sense.
I had an experience at Edinburgh where I was with a friend of mine who was a reviewer. He was reviewing for the paper, and there was 3 of us in the audience. It was a calf. It was a very small venue. I can't remember where. And I can't even remember the name honestly, I can't remember the name of the comedian. I wish I could. But, he walked out and he went, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there's only 3 of you here." there was me and my friend, and there was a bloke in the front row. And he said, "There's only 3 of you here. Thank you very much for coming along. I'll buy you a drink, but you know, there's no point in performing to 3 people." And the bloke in the front row went, "No, I've paid my £6. I want the hour." And he had to do it. It was like, oh my god! And he got through, and he was brilliant. He was really good. But
I've never really been to a bad gig. But I would
No.
say, if you're going to a mixed bill, a lot of it is dependent on the MC. Um,
Yes.
a lot sometimes when I have seen new comedians who I've occasionally thought, you're not ready yet. It's fun, but you're not ready. And sometimes because you don't know until you try it on an audience. Family and friends support is all very nice and well and good, but they it's not always helpful, because if they
Yeah.
say, "Oh yeah, you're great, you're great, you're great," and then
Yeah.
an actual audience of ticket payers or whatever,
Very
they'll
much
sit
so.
down and go, "What are you doing? This isn't."
I think a comedian has to have a bad gig to develop.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, it's all experience.
But
And
a lot of it, like I say, a lot of it is the MC, because if the MC, their job is to get the audience in the mood and to keep them lifted up, and
yeah,
sometimes they forget the rules. Like you can't say, "Oh, we're going to have two acts and then a break," so
yeah,
people keep going to the bathroom because they don't know there's a break coming up, or they don't say things like "don't talk during the acts." But the main thing is they got to get the audience on side and keep them on side as the acts turn. And if the energy in the room isn't up, then the audience, the acts feel it, and it reflects on the
yeah,
performance
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the
Very,
MC is in a struggle because they got to be there for the whole gig. The turns can come out, do their 10 minutes and go home. Whereas the MC's got to stay for the whole gig and keep reappearing, and they might be getting paid less. So it's a
even
thankless task.
even with all the laughter when I'm there.
Well, exactly. But
mind
it's a
you, mind
difficult
you,
job.
mind you, I will sit in silence if they're not funny. I've done that before.
Yeah, it is the hardest job, but if you get a really good MC, I mean, I can tell you straight away, Rich Wilson, amazing MC. Alexandra Haddo,
Yeah,
incredible MC. Callie Beaton is fantastic at it. Jamie Allerton is fantastic at it. I mean, they're all excruciatingly different. They are from the four corners of the compass in terms of how they do what they do, but they are exemplary MCs. And if any of them is running the gig, it's always going to be a good night.
always go. Um,
Yeah.
You attend a lot of comedy fringe festivals, like you said earlier on, throughout the year. Do you have a favourite one, and if so, why?
Well, look, I'm sure they're all great in their own right. There are
What?
there are there's loads of them. There's Bath, there's Buxton, there's Macfest, there's loads and loads of them. But often, because I live in London, a lot of the shows that are going to be there, all the work in progress, they're going to be a lot closer to me. Although it is faster, I can get to Oxford or Leicester quicker than I can get to up the creek. So I'm generally not going to be in East London because it's too far away. I'd rather go to Brighton.
Yeah,
But Jake and Chris, who run Hastings, they do a great job. That's a fantastic festival, small but sure to grow.
yeah,
Gary and Jed, who run Hull, again, a couple of great blokes, great comedians. As I've said, I volunteer at the Leicester Festival, which is the largest comedy festival in Europe. This year there were over 800 shows. I mean, it's a huge endeavor. And we've both talked to Jeff Rowe, who ran it,
Good.
started it 30 years ago, just retired this year.
Yeah,
And I said to him, I think Leicester is the comedians festival. And that's the feedback that I've had. But of course, Edinburgh is the daddy of festivals, the biggest arts festival in the world, and a significant part of that is comedy. This year, for the first time, I'm going to be at Edinburgh for the whole month, but it's like the 15th or 16th time I've been since I first went in 2003. The city is gorgeous. Pretty much everybody's there. It's great to hang out with comedians when they're on their between shows. And the Dave Comedy Awards are the big name in getting comedians noticed. So I can't really say enough about that. There's always issues with overcrowding. There's always issues with accommodation costs and things like that. But it's still amazing. I'd have to say, at the moment, at present, of course I have to say that because I love Edinburgh, and of course I have to say I love Leicester because I volunteered. But that is the honest truth of it. At the moment, they are my favourites. But like I say, Hastings I enjoy. I go to Brighton every year. This year I'll be spending my 51st birthday in Brighton, in the company of some wonderful comedians. I'm going down to see Stefania Licari, Chelsea Birkby, and Aideen McQueen all on one night in one venue, and I'm going to sit there. I'm not going to move, and that's how I'm spending my birthday.
And they're going to wish you happy birthday.
Well, one would hope, but unlikely. But we'll see. We'll see. But that's how I enjoy a festival.
I'm in total agreement. I love Leicester. I'm going to Hastings for the full time, for the first time, for the whole thing. I'm going to Brighton twice. I'm going next weekend. It starts next weekend, and then I'm going Saturday further down, and then Edinburgh. I always said to myself, if I go to this, I will go to this for the rest of my life, and bar missing 2 of them through the pandemic. My first one was 2005, and normally I go for a week, but they've given me something like 6 days, which is still enough, really.
So it's about 50 gigs in 6
but
days.
But of course, enough is never enough. I think it's changed Edinburgh since I first went. I love the grunginess of a fringe. I always have. I love somewhere like the pub that stays up until 5 o'clock, Firebug, 5 a.m. in the morning at Leicester, because you go in and it is on purposely grungy. Or it feels grungy when you walk in, and it's like this.
I don't know if it's on purpose, but it certainly is grungy.
Well, that's how I've. But I'm saying that with joy, because it's like, oh, this is fantastic. And the nights we had in Leicester with all the comedians that were there in the pubs, I loved every part of it. And certainly the Pleasance Courtyard, when I first went there, was like that. Nowadays, through advertising and through having sponsored cafe vans and beer pub places, it's a wee bit more advertising heavy, and I don't know whether that's a good thing, because it spoils the attraction for me. It's still one of my favourite places in the world. I love to get a pint of Guinness, sit down on a summer's day with the Fringe programme, and some gorgeous girl will come up to me and go, do you recommend a show? That genuinely happened, and I nearly fell off my seat.
I'll tell you something. When years ago, I can't remember when it was now, but I guess I was like 35, 40 or something. Anyway, I was in the queue at the stand waiting to go in, and there was a girl in the queue who decided she wanted to make conversation. I don't know what she saw in me that made me think I wanted to chat to people.
Stop putting yourself down.
She's like, and she turned around. She goes, "Oh, are you studying here?" I was like, "What? How old do you think I am?" I said, "I don't know, mid-20s." I go, "I fucking love this city." This is the that's. I don't know if she just had poor eyesight, or maybe it brought me vigorous youth back, being in Edinburgh, being surrounded by comedy. But it's just, I think that was it. I think it's probably that. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. That's the magic of it. It's like you just do not know what is going. My favourite one, and this sounds very name droppy, but one of my favourite fringes was when I went back after the pandemic. I think it was last year. I think it was 2022, and the blog and the podcast were doing some sort of success, and all the comedians. Normally, I run up to them and go, "Oh, you were fantastic tonight. You were great tonight. Thank you very much. Can we have a photograph?" Done. Away. Yeah. But literally all the comedians came up and were recognising me and were stopping me, and I was thinking, my God, this is extraordinary. All I do is sit in the audience and laugh. However, there is so much more, because of our experience of watching them is amazing, and they clearly love it and know who we are. So big up, my friend, big up. How do you think comedy has evolved over the last 50 years? Now, there's a
Um,
question, because I've been watching it for nearly 50 years.
uh, I mean, it's difficult because, yeah,
It's fun.
oh, it's fun now. No, I think okay. First of all, there's opinions about what can and can't be said. Okay,
Yeah,
those opinions will always change. But you got to remember that the once upon a time you watched like Keaton and Chaplin doing silent films. They're funny and they didn't even speak at all. Little Titch just had big shoes, you know.
yeah,
And someone walking into a lamppost was funny way before Rowan Atkinson did it, you know. So uh, what's evolved? I think what's evolved is method and opportunity, rather than it hasn't evolved comedically. What's evolved is how you can do comedy or who can do comedy. So, like during the pandemic, you had Zoom. Now that was a horrible restriction in comedy for most people because it's basically no work, but it meant that some comedians had to innovate, so they would be using like camera trickery to make the most of that box on Zoom. So I think it was Stuart Laws, I might have mentioned this in my podcast before, Stuart Laws did for the Leicester Comedy Festival that in 2021, which was exclusively online. He was doing stand-up sitting in the box like I am now, but in the background behind him he was going around the room, and then he'd go out through a door and then come in through the cupboard, and like, so it was amazing what he managed to do. Or you're like, you can play two characters and do a split screen and be on in two ways at the same time. So technologically you could do it, and also you can get your comedy seen all around the world, places you might not be able to go. They can now dial in and watch comedy. So technologically speaking, that's evolved. And I think opportunity, because as I mentioned, you know, your gender, your sexuality, your ethnicity would have kept you off the stage and the screen for a long time. So they've now got an opportunity. They can now have their voices heard. And I suppose we had in the 80s, they said, oh, well, now we've got alternative comedy, because you had mainstream stand-up shows like the comedians and everything, you had variety and what have you, and then you had alternative comedy, and you had things like the Young Ones and Ben Elton and all of that. And what we have now is not the evolution, is we now have more alternatives.
yes, yeah. What an answer! That is wonderful. That it's so good, because you're right about more alternatives. There are so many more ways that comedians rightly express themselves, and with comedy being subjective and a space for anyone to get up and say what they want is wonderful, because that's truly a democratic society, etc., etc., etc. And, you know, to get up and say what you want to say, who are you to stop me from saying what I want? You know, and if they can do it in a comedic way, then it's, once you get a laugh and the audience are on your side, you can say whatever you like and you can get your point across to them.
Yeah, and in the age of the viral,
has developed so much.
Yeah, in the age of now, we have the age of the viral with social media and everything. But one joke could be all over the world in minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and it could be, and it's this thing I said before about being a series of moments. You know, you only need a quick one quick moment, and that's your career could arguably be made, or certainly a very large door be open. And then we have moments like we had when Miles Jupp and Al Murray just appeared at the King's Head, and like, oh, wasn't expecting these guys, and then suddenly,
amazing,
Miles Jupp hadn't done stand up in about a decade. Al Murray plays big theatres, and then he's, you know, in a tiny little basement club, and you go, this is fantastic. That's a moment. And you know, Lee Mack appearing and doing 10 minutes in a pub in Kingston on a Milton Jones gig, just turning up. That's a moment. Arthur Smith at the Cambridge Comedy Festival in the pouring rain and inviting the audience up onto the stage out of the rain and singing Hallelujah. That's a moment. You know,
who doesn't love Arthur Smith?
Who doesn't love Arthur Smith? Daphne Fairfax.
I mean, that guy deservedly won the Leicester Legend Award.
Very much so.
Do you have any particular favourite comedians, having seen so many? Is that
It
an unfair question?
is unfair. I do get asked a lot, and it honestly is really, really hard because they are so different. And I've said it already.
Yeah.
I could sit here listing names, and the sun would go down, and we'd still be going. I think all the classics, obviously, we've mentioned, Les Dawson, Tommy Cooper. I think I have to say Dave Allen, obviously.
Brilliant.
I had the very great honor and privilege of seeing him live at the Strand in '95, I think it was.
I
And
couldn't get into that. Couldn't get
no, I
in.
know,
Still
and I will forever hold that over you. I mean, it
Well
was a
done. I
great
bet it
show.
was amazing.
It was amazing. Well, the good news is for you that I really can't remember it, but I mean, it was. I remember the way it made me feel, and it was. I mean, he was one of my idols. He really
Yeah.
would just challenge. He'd like to challenge, but he was like. It was also had like this geniality, this affability, and it was very calm. And then he would build to an explosion of rage, and he would work this imaginary props around him. He would use the chair. Everything was, he'd do a prop comedy, then he'd do sketch comedy, and it was just absolute masterclass, really. But I could go on. If you're looking at comedians now, I mean, I've got a particular affinity for. I've mentioned Adele Cliff. She's just joyous. Rich Wilson, I mentioned, the MC, who I absolutely love. Aideen McQueen is incredible, very fiery and passionate. Esmanito, I'm a bit afraid of her, but she's a magnificent comedian. Lily Phillips, we've mentioned. I could go all day. Michael Odewale, Lauren Patterson, William Stone, Fatih El Ghori, Tati McLeod, Tony Law. On and on and on it goes. So,
Not many then.
Not many. So who's my favorite? It's not who's my favorite. It's who would I love to go and see in this instance. No, they're different people. They're different people.
And as I said before, that's the magic of it. With
Yes.
every one of them being able to go at the same medium from a different viewpoint. That's the originality as well. I think that plays a massive part in it. If the comedian is original, then your attention is, well, this is a bit off the wall or off kilter or whatever. But it's wonderful to see how they do it. Now then, do you have any tips for me developing my blog and podcast, having a successful podcast like you do?
Oh God, I'm no expert.
No.
I can't tell you what's right for you. I can tell you what I do, and if that influences you in any way, then God help you.
I always listen to what you have to say.
I'd say, okay, so if I have any rules about what I do, they are minimal. I only interview people I've seen perform, ideally at least an hour. I want to be able to talk to someone and know in my own mind, I have an understanding of what they're trying to say because of the comedian that they are. And I can't understand the comedian they are if I haven't seen them sufficiently perform. If I've seen them do a 10-minute turn, it's not enough for me because there's so much more that they need to express. So I have to have seen a decent amount of their comedy. I always remember the guest is a priority. Weirdly, I'm on here today talking to you on your podcast because I don't think anyone wants to hear what I have to say. My guest is the priority. What they have to say is
I've had a joyous time.
But I always try. My job I see is as keeping them talking, and if I might point them in a certain direction, there might be an anecdote that I'm aware of. I want to sort of glean out of them, and sometimes I'll ask it directly, but mostly not. And if I have an anecdote of my own, I will bring it up if I'm asked, or if it's really relevant, I'll bring it up. But I'm mindful of the fact that if someone listens to one of my episodes, hopefully they'll want to listen to others. And if I tell the same story I just told somebody else, then I don't want them to hear me say the same thing. So I try and minimize what I add to it. But that's about it, really. I don't have a lot of rules. I do it because I love it, and I love the people that I talk to, and I admire them, and I respect them, and I enjoy their comedy. And that's why I do it. I want to hear what they have to say, and I've been completely enwrapped with everything that they say.
That is a perfect answer, my friend. I can remember. I can't remember the year, but I can remember when I first met you in a pub where
Yes.
we had that infamous story where there was all those comedians on the bill, and we
Yes.
just sat at the bar doing what we did now, just talking comedy for
Yep. Yep.
all
I remember
night.
that. Those are the
And
water rats at King's
it
Cross.
was, there you go.
Yeah,
What
there
year
you
was
go.
that? Was that 2021?
I think it was 21. Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
We
And
good to see the great, amazing lineup of comedians, all being brilliant. And then in the bar afterwards, they're all milling around, and you and I sat just talking about comedy for the
well,
rest of the next few hours.
I am so delighted that there are other people like me who are I was going to say sad. We're not sad. We are supportive of the
Devoted.
cause, and it is a pleasure genuinely to see you going around all these comedy clubs that we do.
Yeah,
And
you too, my friend.
I love talking to you about comedy, and I've so much enjoyed this. I really have. You are keep doing what you do. Is there
Yeah, it's
anything
been a lot
else
of
you'd
fun.
like to say before we go? Where people can find
Um,
you, social media, your
yeah.
podcast?
So the podcast is called Comedy in a Nutshell. And I ask my guests to sum up comedy in a nutshell, so they can define what it means to them, or how they would describe it. I also do another podcast called True Crime Diary, which is basically myself and my friends who talk about a true crime story from history and take the piss out of it. Links to both of those are on my.
It's funny.
Yeah. Crime is funny. If it was 100 years ago, nobody cares. Funny. So in my Instagram bio, so my Instagram is at the comedy nerd, and in my bio in that you can get links to my podcasts, or you can get those obviously wherever you get podcasts. They're in all the right places. And if you see me at a gig or at a festival, then come over and say hi. It's quite rare and weird when I get recognized, but it's quite nice.
Well, please keep doing what you do, and I'm looking forward to having a drink with you again soon. And we'll see you definitely at Brighton and Hastings.
Sure.
And as I say, keep doing what you do, my friend, because it's wonderful that we're there supporting this wonderful
You too.
medium. And I'm sick of saying the word wonderful, but I've so much enjoyed
it. Quite right. It is wonderful. What better word for it?
It is. All the best, my friend, and you take care.
Take care. See you soon.